Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wood Hounds. My name is Joe, and I'm sitting here with my very good friend, Dan. Dan, why don't you tell the world hello?
Hello, Wood Hounds. Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Great to be here again. Well, I think so anyway. I don't know. I don't know how things are going down here in this Wood Hound studio. Every time I come down here, it's, I got to deal with these flights and I don't know, it gets me a little cranky.
Yeah, and to make things worse, I just had some hot peppers, and I've been sneezing and blowing my nose, and Dan is getting pretty agitated with me. So
Yeah.
if you if you hear some weird noises, guys, lesson learned: do not eat hot peppers before you go live with a podcast.
Tip of the day right there. That's
Yeah.
all we got. All right. See you next week.
Yeah, that might be a good way to keep things exciting, though, in the wood yard. If you do get bored stacking wood or splitting, just start eating hot peppers, and then try to do it like that.
Oh, man. Well,
Yeah, these things were very good, though, but they snuck up on me. I love spicy food. and they didn't taste that spicy, but then the next thing I know, I can't even see straight.
wow.
So,
Yeah. I cannot handle spicy food. Not a fan.
No?
Not a fan.
My stomach is made of steel. The spicier, the better for me. Yeah. So how are you doing, Dan?
Well, not too bad. I'm starting to enjoy. I think, what is it now? The 118th day of January. But I don't want to talk about the weather. So I'm not going to mention how crappy it's been and how I haven't seen the sun and how it's finally starting to feel like spring and it's almost May. I'm not going to talk about that. So
yeah.
Otherwise, I'm doing
everyone. Everyone in Ohio has a vitamin D deficiency this month. It's been terrible. And then we had snow, and then we went to 80-degree weather over the weekend, and by Wednesday it was snowing again.
Yeah. April has been insane.
Yeah, it's just been awful, and everything's just drenched. It rains constantly. And my place looks terrible, just the mud. And I haven't cleaned up because it's hard to clean up, chafe and sawdust when it's just soaking wet and mush on the ground.
Yeah. Not fun.
No. But as they say, well, if every day was sunshiny, we would all live in a desert. So let's take the good let's take the good with the bad. But someday I'd like to have some good. I guess I'm not asking for too much.
No. But otherwise, everything good with you? Everything good?
Yeah, everything's well. I think my sales are a little slower, and I still don't know if the pandemic had played a role with our sales because we had a big year last year, and I'm still too new in it to see trends, through the months. But I had a huge April last year, and my April this year has been good, but it's not as good as last year. So we were a little bit slower, but that still got me a chance to make wood, which was a problem for me last year. I didn't have enough going into the fall.
Yep.
So everything that we're doing now has been about production. But again, when it's pouring down rain, we don't work.
Right. Yeah. I think the same for me. My April was pretty slow at the stand, and I think just the weather, just played a huge factor.
Yeah, I think now too, everyone is shifting gears from the fireplace, and they're looking to get that wood pit started.
Yes.
I did get a number of calls. So there seems to be a growing trend in our area. I would imagine it's everywhere with these home pizza ovens, and they're wood fired. They're out on their back patio.
Yes.
It seems to be a growing trend, and people want, like smaller splits. And that's where my wood is ideal for these pizza ovens. So I have 2 deliveries next week going to home wood-fired pizza ovens. Kind of exciting.
Oh, yeah, that's kind of fun, exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping to open up my outdoor fire pit this weekend, possibly. We'll see. but yeah, I think that season we're making the transition from indoor fireplaces to the outdoor fire pit.
Hmm. The other thing too that helps me out are these restaurants. I have a whole list of restaurants I deliver to, and their consumption is consistent. So it doesn't matter what the weather's like. They
Yeah.
seem. I have restaurants that average about a quart a month. Some average a half a quart a month. Some average a quarter quart a month. So I just have a sense, when they're going to be calling for their next delivery, and we're loaded up and we're ready to go.
Yeah, and to have those deliveries ready, I'm guessing you need to have all your wood stacked and seasoned, right?
Yeah, sad. That is, that's the big deal with restaurants is that when you deliver to residential, especially this time of the year, these could be people looking to buy their wood for the winter time, so they're going to just stack it and let it dry out. But restaurants, they need it to burn now. So
Yes.
the emphasis is on stacking and drying. It's a big deal.
Yeah, we actually had we received an email from Mark. Mark Nelson sent us an email, and he was kind of wondering about the different methods that we use for both stacking and seasoning, and the how you achieve the best results.
Well, though, Dan, this is our new segment of the podcast, and this is known as listener mail.
Listener mail. Yes, we received quite a few emails. We got one from Christopher Artman, and then there was Mike Bates, another Mike, John Jurek, and our good friend Kevin Skitter Kev up in Canada even sent us an email.
Skitter Kev.
Yes, and it was funny because his email was he was listening to our podcast in his processor, and we had mentioned on the podcast of him being in the processor.
We're clairvoyant. We knew
Yes.
that was going to happen.
So yeah, we appreciate everyone who's emailed us, and just keep sending them in. You can email thewoodhounds@gmail.com.
Yeah, and then there's a good chance that we will mention your name or even read your email, your thoughts on the air.
So let me go back to Mark's email here, and like I said, he was wondering with the many different ways to dry and stack and season wood. Sometimes it depends on like what region you're in, and there's also various factors like the type of wood that you are seasoning. So he just wanted us to kind of discuss possibly like what methods we use, what we think is possibly the best way to stack, and how long to stack and season wood.
Well, thank you, Mark, for that email. And I think this is a great topic for our episode today, Dan. What do you think?
Yes, because I
All right.
recently experienced a alternative method that I tried for seasoning wood that didn't really turn out as great as I had thought.
No? All right. So just so everyone knows, let's properly define seasoned wood because as what we've learned with an earlier episode about measurements, there's a lot of freelancing out there on what means what. But in firewood, people will always say, is the wood wet? Is the wood dry? And the confusion is if the wood was left out in the rain, did it get rained on? Is it wet?
Yep.
What we are talking about seasoning is the moisture content inside of the log. So remember, a tree when it's alive has its roots in the ground and it's taking all the water out of the ground and up through the tree and all the way out to the tips of the branches and the leaves, and it's full of water. When it's cut down, the tree's still full of water. And when you make firewood, you have to cut it and then split it. And that's when the drying or the seasoning process begins.
Yes. Yeah, seasoning is not like salt and pepper and oregano. It's letting the wood sit and dry and I guess release or evaporate off the moisture content inside it.
I had heard the term seasoned comes from the average of 4 months to, or the average, 3 to 4 months for a stick of firewood to dry out to where you can burn it. So it has to last a season.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true, but I think we can go with that for now.
I think we can. Yeah. That's kind of what I've always heard it as too, is that, if the wood is split and then it sits through a seasons like spring and summer and then fall. It's seasoned, so it's been through the seasons.
Yeah. I had heard you say that you were always told that your firewood has to be split and stacked by Easter
Yes, for that fall.
to
So
use
yeah,
in the wintertime.
but I think that had to do with more or less like the farming community I grew up in was, after Easter is when you're starting to work on your crops, getting crops in the ground. So you're not worried about firewood anymore. So you want to have your firewood done by Easter so that way you can focus on your farming.
Hmm. Yeah, I had noticed, because we stack our wood. I've noticed that wood really does season uh, all throughout the year. I think as long as it's not frozen in the wintertime, that the moisture is going to come out of that log one way or the other.
Yep.
Uh huh. And that's where I think the important thing is to get it stacked. Because if you leave it in a pile, the logs that are down inside that pile can't get the air and the wind blowing through them, and all that moisture just accumulates and soaks in and turns moldy.
Yes. Yeah. And I think the two main factors that everyone always talks about are wind and sun. But I think wind is the bigger contributing factor to seasoning firewood.
Yeah, well, I can speak from experience here. I have noticed, especially in the summertime when the sun's out and it's hot, I'll come out at night and walk down one of the rows and I can feel the heat coming off of the stack of wood. So those logs are soaking in heat, and that's where it's working that water out.
Yeah.
And it seems like that heating and cooling and heating and cooling, I don't know, is that convection? What is that called? Where I think that really, when that starts helping that water work its way out of the log.
Yeah.
When you split it open, that face that you're now seeing is just, sometimes it's just wet to the touch, but it dries out quick. But there's still that water that's, deep inside that
Deep inside. Yep. And
that
that's got to
stick of
get
firewood.
wicked out. Is that what they call it? When you wick out the moisture?
I like it. I think we can go with it.
Yeah.
And then the important thing, for getting the water out of logs is not only because it's easier to light and easier to get your fire going, but especially if you're burning it in your house with all that moisture, the heat is not being used to, radiate heat into your house. It's being used to boil away the water that's still inside that stick. And that creates incomplete burning and combustion, and that tar and creosote gathers on your pipe, your
Right.
flue. And if you get enough of it, that stuff can light on fire because it's flammable, and you can get a flue fire and potentially burn down your house.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this isn't just about style. Yeah, this is substance here. About making sure you're burning seasoned firewood. The other thing too, Dan, is these new EPA stoves that's got that catalyst in it or that recycler. They demand dry firewood
Yes, they do.
because you can gum that thing up and then just make it, lose all of the benefits of a recycler like that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So what is your have you tried out different methods of stacking? Like have you ever tried the Holzhausen or whatever it's called, the round stack? Or you always been traditional single row stack 3 inches apart?
Yeah, I had heard once upon a time that you stack your rows with enough gap that a mouse can get between them.
Yep.
And I had been cheating closer and closer, and it was in a stack of wood. I had about 10 rows all stacked with about a hand width between the rows, and I got mold, and it was a
Oh.
disaster. Yeah, it was a disaster. I they were they were I had a section that was facing east and west, and one that was facing north and south, and they all got mold.
Hmm.
So what I've started doing now is I leave a pretty healthy space between the rows, and like I go for free pallets, and I'll just lay my pallets down in a single file, and I'll stack one row on one edge of the pallet and another row on the other edge. So I got If you think about how wide a pallet is, there's 2 rows of wood on it.
Yep.
So there is a pretty big space. It's not the full length of 16 inches in between them, but it's pretty good. I haven't had any mold ever since.
Wow. That kind of makes me worry because I just recently stacked some wood on a 4 foot wide pallet and I put 3 rows on it and they're pretty close together on the
Yeah,
inside.
I don't know. That's the traditional way of stacking it, anyways. And I think if it's just like 3 rows, I think that there's still good circulation that gets in there. But it was this section of where I'm serious. I had like 10 rows of
Oh,
cords,
yep.
and it was like, if you start on one end, one, two, three, it was like 4, 5, 6, 7. That was really moldy, and then on the other side, it was like just the ones in the middle. But it just ruined all that wood, all that work, all that time to stack it, and it's just lesson learned. It ain't going to happen again. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the situation I alluded to earlier was I tried last year a few of those big face cord bulk firewood bags where
yeah.
you just loosely toss the wood in and then you let them sit.
How'd
And
that go?
it went okay. Um, I just don't think that the airflow was enough. Again, just that the tight mesh of those bags, I just don't think let enough. I may have had them in a position where they didn't receive, the airflow they should have, but
Yeah.
yeah,
How
wasn't
long
a
were they in
fan.
there?
About 15 months,
Are you serious?
but it was red oak, and
Ugh.
so even even stacked out in the middle of nowhere, oak is gonna probably not season that good in 15
Yeah.
months.
So you didn't put like any maple or ash or beech in any of those bags? It was
Nope.
all oak.
Yep. Yeah.
Did you get any mold?
I did have a little mold in a couple spots. And again, I think just like the water gets down in there and then the airflow
Uh-huh.
isn't the greatest. But
Any ants?
my biggest thing was just loading them. Like I just didn't have the way to load them. So
Mm-hmm.
no ants, no ants. No.
No ants, no bugs or anything like that. I'm not sold on these bags. Now I'm in production. I just don't make firewood for myself. But and that's what I'm saying. For all the time that you mess around with those bags, you could probably have all of that wood stacked up in a single file. I don't know.
Yeah. That's
I
what
don't
I
know.
kind of came to the conclusion as well.
Yeah, and you know
For
darn
me.
well if that wood was stacked for 15 months in a straight single file, it'd be dynamite firewood, you know.
Yep. Well, the
Uh-huh.
interesting thing was I received a comment on I did a video on it on my YouTube channel and I received a comment from someone overseas and in Europe and they said that their tradition there is to split the wood and let it sit for like 3 months and then put it in the bags for like delivering. So the wood is kind of semi-seasoned when it goes into the bag.
Uh-huh.
That makes more sense. Because
Yeah,
then
but you still have to buy the bag. And you have to have a way to deliver it, and lay it
yeah.
down on someone's driveway, and then the customer's gonna wanna have to deal with it too. I don't know.
Yeah. It's it
Don't you think if you were a customer, wouldn't you rather just have if you're gonna stack it yourself around the back of the house, wouldn't you rather just have the wood just dumped loosely on your driveway than having it set into a big bag?
Well, I'm not sure.
No?
If they had a way to like unload the bag with like maybe a crane or something and set it
Right.
inside my garage or set it somewhere, that's then less mess to deal with than a big, cord of face cord of wood dumped in my driveway that I got to sweep up the bark and pick all the pieces up and
Yeah.
I
All
don't
right.
know. I don't know.
It just seems like going in and out of that darn bag. Where you just pick stuff up off and put it in a wheelbarrow or something. I don't know.
I did unload one just the other day, just by hand, and it's actually not too bad when you open it up
No.
wide and then the sides kind of fold down as you unload it. So
Okay. How
it's
long do you think that bag's gonna last?
well, that's the interesting thing is that um they're sold and they're advertised to set out in the open, full sun, and you should be able to use them 3, 4, 5 seasons. Each year reuse them.
Uh-huh.
But then on the label, it had a little diagram that showed do not keep these bags out in the sun because the
Oh
UV
gosh.
rays will deteriorate them.
Ugh. Did you notice they had deteriorated any compared to new?
Not really, but I didn't have a few tears just from like the edges of pieces, like pushing
Uh-huh.
through and ripping them. So
They didn't feel like brittle or like turning to powder and when you
no,
flex the fabric?
but I would say that you'd probably get 2, maybe 3 seasons, 3 reuses of them if you were lucky,
Yeah.
because it's hard on them.
I see a role for them, for a particular operation, but I don't know, not for seasoned firewood because could you imagine putting all that wood? I mean, you could really speed up your production. Just spit all those logs into a bag and go fork them and set them somewhere.
Yeah,
But I don't know. Are you really going to deliver those to a customer's house? I guess you can, but whatever. But for someone like me, we would still have to get our truck loaded. Oh, and I'd hate to open that up and the wood, yeah, is like all
yep,
mold, or there's like a dead raccoon in the middle of it, or just something. Oh my gosh,
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah,
Well, and Mark had alluded to this in his email. Another interesting thing is the species of wood.
yeah,
So like I know there's a lot of people who run wood just into a big pile, but that's mostly ash. And like ash being low moisture to begin with, I think you can get away with it. But have you ever noticed, like, I know you kind of separate out some of your species,
yes.
and have you noticed anything with like if stacking like maple is different compared to stacking oak, cherry, ash?
Yeah. Well, would lump all of, I would like ash, maple, cherry, not as much beech, but I'd lump those first three together. I think they're about all the same. Oak is oak and hickory. They take a
Oh,
while. Yeah, they take a
yeah,
long time. Beech is somewhere in between. Um, but I stack like a silver maple and I split them smaller. Man, they dry out fast.
yeah.
Yeah, they do. I'm serious. I've had, especially in the heat of summer. I mean, they look, the ends when the log starts to dry out and those ends get those cracks in them. That's called checking. Man, the moisture comes down low in them. So, you measure your moisture content. It's scientific, Dan. It's not just, by a sense.
What?
They have, yeah, they sell a moisture meter. You can buy them pretty expensive. You can buy them pretty cheap. And it's just a little handheld box with these two little needles, and you stick them in the wood, and it tells you the moisture content. The magic number in firewood is 20%, but
Yeah,
you can see it burning decent, 25, 30%. And who's to say that the meter is accurate? You can apply other tests to a log to make sure it's dried out. But the extreme other end of that is oak, because a fresh split piece of oak, my moisture meter will read OL for overload. It won't
yeah.
even. It's
Over the
too
limit.
high. Yeah, it's too high to even rate it.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's just the way oak is. It's a heavy, dense wood, and it takes a while for it to season.
yeah.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I see though. Wood, it seasons in all four seasons. Like I had said earlier about being frozen, obviously, but I still think there's no, with the heat of summer and the wind blowing, especially where we are, because it seems to be windy all the time. The wood really dries out fast out here.
Yeah, that's the one thing with my friend Rick at his wood yard. He's out in the open. He's got full sun all day, and the wind always blows. It's always
Yeah.
blowing.
Hmm. But the emphasis though is to get the wood seasoned, to get it dry. I just think that you cannot beat stacking it. It's worth the time. It's worth the effort. It's your biggest return on investment, I think, with firewood.
Yeah. because it
Yeah.
also, I think, takes up less space in your wood yard, and
Yep.
it just it's yeah. I would
It looks
agree.
great.
I try to stack everything I can.
I will stack some every year. I stack a row of oak strategically off my barn because it makes a snow fence. It keeps the drifts down by the door, you know. But I
Yeah.
think you could get real creative. You've ever see these stacks of wood with like artwork in them and
Yes,
stuff?
I love them.
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this, Dan. What about covering? If you do stack your wood, do you cover it?
I try to in the winter. So like October-ish, end of October, I try to either put a tarp or some sheets of steel or something over my stacks.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and that's just to keep, the snow from in the spring just being a huge tsunami of water getting into the wood pile.
How about the
But I would love. I'm eventually planning to have all of my wood be under a roof where it does
Oh
not
wow.
get hit rained on.
Now that's wood that you're using for your furnace. You're right.
No, that's wood that I'm selling.
Oh,
The
okay.
wood that I burn in my boiler, I don't care what it looks like.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I like the fact that I have a woodshed, it's so I can stay out of the rain when I'm out, tending to my furnace. I never fill it all the way full because I want to have a little space for me in there.
Yes.
Yeah, I have gotten away from covering wood, and I have opinions, Dan, and I'm not afraid to share them.
Oh boy. Hang on. Let me
I
get the beep button ready.
Oh my god, yeah. No, I believe in science, and I believe that all of this stuff, you can get an objective truth about everything I'm about to say. Um, but I also operate at a level of practicality. And if there is a benefit from covering your wood versus not covering the wood, that's where I'm saying it's at a scientific level to where people, that operate on a level of practicality wouldn't appreciate it. And that's what
Okay.
I don't cover wood. I've gotten away from it. I think, in fact, it's good for the logs to get rained on and for them to dry off. It seemed like every time I covered wood, the wood was filthy. When you bring it in the house, there's always a poof of dust when you set it down. It's like covered in dirt. The rodents get into it. The possum, the raccoons get into it under those tarps, and I just got away from it. I don't see the benefit of spending all the money on tarps and getting them secured, weighted down, and all.
Yeah.
I just think the wood's fine. Just let it get rained on, let it get snowed on. The only time I will cover it though is if I know there is a snowstorm coming and I need that little section of wood.
Yep.
I think that because I don't want to get the snow all over my gloves.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I don't see any benefit to covering it. And that would also go into other opinions. And I know people have strong opinions, and I would never, debate this with you. I think you can do what you want and believe what you want, but like this bark up, bark down stacking, I don't know, Dan. I don't I don't see any benefit one way or the other.
I'm a bark down until the top few rows, and then I'm a bark up. And there's science behind it.
Yeah.
Yes.
There
So,
is?
well, yeah, because if you think of it, the bark holds the moisture in, right? When the tree is alive, that's its outer skin. And when water evaporates, it rises. So if your bark is down, the water is evaporating up out of your piece of wood. I just made that up right now.
Well, you are wearing a lab coat and you have a microscope in front of you, so.
Yes. No. But back to the covering, I will agree that when you cover a stack of wood with like a tarp, that is where I think you do run into issues. And my plan is to have kind of like smaller shelters where like the roof is there's probably like a foot or 2 foot gap above your stack, and so it's pretty much open on four sides. It's just not getting rained on.
Yeah.
'Cause I don't know. I just found that when wood doesn't get rained on, it just I don't know. I have a lot of You ever get those really small, like black mold dots on the end?
Yes, I was just looking at them today.
Yeah, and I
I
don't know
was
if that's from
ah,
moisture or the sugars in the wood.
yeah, I don't know. I was splitting beech logs this morning, and the gray bark, like beech has like this elephant skin kind of bark. It's like real brittle, and it had some of them just had those little black balls on it. It was ugh.
Yeah,
But they're like they don't come off. They're like hard, man. They're like stuck on, and they don't smear. They're not poofy or anything like that. But these were on rounds that have been left in a pile,
oh,
just because
yeah.
I haven't felt like splitting them until recent. I could be just as lazy as the next guy. Some of these projects, just they'll lay right in front of you, and you just don't notice them anymore.
Right. That's
So
that's
I'm,
I've
yeah,
got a
so I've been trying to get this split open.
I've got a little pile in my wood yard that I just every day I'm just hoping the next day I come out and it's gone, but it hasn't disappeared yet.
Yeah. Dan, we are leaving out one other way of drying wood, and I don't have much experience with it, but I do have observations, and that is kiln drying
Oh yes, yep. I have
firewood. Do you
zero
do you have
experience.
any? Do you
No.
have zero experience? I find it an interesting um, practice, and in a way, it seems that it more benefits the producer than the customer. But the big benefit for kiln drying for a customer is, in theory, it's killed all the bugs and the mold growing on the logs. But I think that's where you got to be really reliable on a good vendor and their process, because you could still have it kiln dried and have it kiln dried to the greatest degree of all, but if you then leave it sit outside, or
Right.
left it or to where like mold or critters can get into it, or other bugs, then you lose all the benefit.
Yeah.
The objective is to get the moisture content in that log down. So if you stack it, maybe that wood's got to sit there for a year to get down to 20%. If it is kiln dried, in theory, you can get it down in a couple days. So your producer can turn that cord over faster and make their money and get it sold. Other
Yep.
benefits would be if it's a USDA certified kiln, you can now transport it over state lines if you have a bundle business or if you live on a border between states.
Yep.
Um, you know, I know there's no firewood police out there, but you still got to play by the rules.
Yeah.
Uh, but people and certain homeowners will pay a premium for kiln dried, which I'd have to crunch the numbers here for a business model to understand your return on investment and how much more money you can get per cord if it's kiln dried, and how big is the kiln, and in theory, how much wood can you kiln dry in a year,
Yeah.
with the expense of the fuel to create the heat and the electricity to move the air.
Yeah. It's a big undertaking. I mean, you got to be
Uh-huh.
moving a lot of wood, I think.
Yeah, it seems like there isn't all the kilns that I see are big. I don't see, other than homemade ones, like a commercial kiln that just does one cord.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because, that would be something, if it was affordable, that I would be willing to look into.
I
But
think they
I don't
make
know.
I think I've seen smaller kilns that are kind of geared towards like sawmill, for like drying out lumber that you
Right.
could possibly fit like 3 IBC totes in to do a cord.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I don't know. I have
Yeah. I don't know if I could ever make a kiln work here. I'd think if you do store it, it's got to be in a building, you know? I mean,
right,
are you really going to put all that time and effort and expense into kiln drying a cord of firewood, just to leave it outside?
right, because
I don't know.
there's got to also be a little like reabsorption, reabsorbing of moisture from the air. If you take a piece
Yeah.
of wood down to 14, 15% moisture and you let it sit outside for 3 months in
Ohio in the summertime
right,
with 90% humidity.
there's got to be a little bit that goes back. I don't know, maybe not.
Hmm. Yeah, well, and that's where to advertise, the benefit of kiln drying, I think it's, killing all the bugs,
Yep.
But I don't know if I'm highly biased. I can just speak from experience here. Yeah, the firewood that we make, when it is split, usually the logs that we get are green. These are trees that were just cut down within the last few weeks. When we make them into firewood, they are immediately stacked. There's no bugs in them. And
Yep.
when you stack firewood and it's off the ground and it's out in the open, you don't get bugs. You can get an occasional one here and there, but you don't get an infestation. And you don't get mold, and it dries out on its own. Yeah, the wood that we deliver is just gorgeous firewood, and it's all because we hand stack it. But that's what I've had to do in order to grow my business is try to get a year ahead of my wood because we sell seasoned wood. I don't split and sell, so the wood that we're making now won't be sold until the fall.
Right. Yep.
Hmm.
And that's, I think, again, when we're talking about stacking your wood, that's, I think we both agreed, right? That's the best way to properly season it.
Yeah, it is. The problem for me though, because I'm a producer, if I'm a homeowner and if I go through 2 cords a year in my fireplace, that's kind of easy to stack.
Yep.
My outdoor wood furnace, I go from where 10 to 12 to 15 cords a year. That's easy to stack. But in production, when you're selling 150 to 200 cords, for I consider myself a small firewood operation. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You
Yes, it is.
that's like stacking a cord every day, 5 days a week, and you get
Oh,
Saturday and Sunday off. After a while, it gets old.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what made me want to look at those bags. But the more I started looking into them and how I would have to build my operation around them, I don't know. I'm not sold on them.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Well, and for me, my main thing was just trying to add convenience for my personal use. So not even
Hmm.
not even necessarily on the business side of it, but yeah.
But I'm all for trying different ways and different things. I am not a person that believes that everything that I do is the only way and the best way. I'm all open for new ideas and stuff, and that's just my commitment to being practical, being efficient, and trying to improve.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
we've said this many times if you haven't listened to past episodes, but we're not here trying to tell people what they are doing. We're just talking about what we do. So if you run your wood into a 30-foot stack of, unstacked firewood and it's working for you, that's great. We're just saying
yeah,
from our experience, stacking
yeah,
it
that's my experience.
has worked the best.
Hmm. But the emphasis is got to get that moisture content down.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Let it dry out from the inside out, and you'll have a happy wintertime.
Yes. Surprisingly, water does not burn. So get the water out of your wood and it'll burn.
Yeah. The one customer I had that was delivered green oak, he said he called it fire retardant firewood, he said. Yeah.
Oh, yep.
All right, Mark, I want to really thank you for sending us that email, and I hope that we answered your question or left you with confusion and angst.
If we
Yeah.
did, send us another email.
Yeah. So Dan, maybe this is a good time to start playing our music here as we shut down for the day.
Yeah, let's hit it.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in and making the Wood Hounds podcast a worldwide phenomenon.
Yes, the #1 firewood podcast in the world. We appreciate it. We love you, Wood Hounds. Thanks for tuning in. And
Everyone have He's
A
messing it
very
up.
cool day.